Hello, here's a quick little tutorial video that I didn't find a video for, so I thought I'd make one for it. It's setting up an isometric camera and as well as creating an impossible object in Cinema 4D in specifically Octane. And the reason that this is kind of an issue is that Cinema 4D has a native isometric camera, but there is no native isometric camera in Octane. So we'll get started, just have a cube just to get things set up, and we're going to start by working in just purely Cinema 4D, making the isometric camera, getting it all set up, and then eventually we'll convert it to a faux isometric camera for Octane. So first we'll set it to sort of an even 500 by 500 by 500. In Cinema 4D, the isometric, the distance doesn't really matter, but because this is a fake isometric camera we're making for Octane, the distance somewhat does matter, and so that's why we're just going to give it enough of a room that we don't have to worry about accidentally clipping any geometry. And then first we're going to make our impossible object. So here's me just making little points. Don't really have to be very super specific. And then we're going to go in and actually make them the actual points. And this is something that I learned learning this process is if you go to the move tool, double click on a point, you can give the point its exact values, which is something I did not know. And so we're just going to make ourselves sort of this little zigzaggy thing. Double check. Sometimes it's better just to do it in the isometric camera. So negative 200 in the x, negative 200 in the x, negative 200 in the z on the second point, then the third point, negative 200, negative 200, negative 200 on all three axes, and then there you go. You finally see that it all starts to kind of come together as one impossible object. And we'll call that our master spline. We're going to break up the spline into little splits of splines, basically. So the first spline will just be that up. So it's just that up motion for the first spline. Make spline 2, and this will be the second leg of the shape, basically. So we don't need the first point. We don't need a third or fourth point. We just need the second and third. Keep accidentally doubling up the wrong splines. Go back to the master spline. Make a spline number 3. This is going to be for points 3 and 4. So we don't need the first, we don't need the second, and we don't need the fifth. We just need 3 and 4. Go back to the master spline, make another copy. This time we only need 4 and 5. So we're going to get rid of that. So we just have points 4 and 5 and call that spline 4. So these are all of our little pieces that we need to make the proper sweeps. So first one, there you go, sweep 1. Make a copy of it. Swap out the spline for spline 2. Spline 2 gets, sweep 2 gets spline 2. Make a copy. Sweep 3. Sweep 3 gets spline 3. Sweep 4 gets spline 4, and there you go. Now the only little issue is that all of them now have these little lips, basically, and so we just have to go into the splines and just sort of extend them over just a little bit so it covers the lip. It's about 10 points of value. Oh, see, 20 is too much because this rectangle is 20 by 20, so you need half of that. So it's 10. And there you go, that fills in the lip. Go to sweep 3, do the same thing. Negative 10, oh, no, not negative 10, positive 10. There you go. And then for the final lip, go to sweep 4, spline 4, and there you go. Now adjust the Y, add 10 points to it. There we go. Now it's fully animatable. We can sort of draw our own paths. Now you'll see that the first sweep kind of doesn't make the full impossible object a possibility, so that's why we kind of have to break it apart a little bit. We have to get rid of some of the polygons, so we'll keep the master sweep there and then deconstruct this sweep. And basically we just have to go into the polygons, just remove those excess polygons so that they don't show up in the perspective, basically. Go to the isometric, and it still seems to be covering it just a little bit. And so instead of having it being fully extended, as you can see, it still covers the top of the, we will go back to the master sweep, and then we will shorten it a little bit. Oh, I think I did that wrong. We're going to shorten it. Yep. So by shortening it a little bit, then we don't have that overlap where you can see the lip. Go into that, make it a primitive, get rid of those polygons, and then you see it makes a impossible shape. It makes sort of an impossible to create looping shape, which is a fun little thing for people who like MC Escher type stuff. It's kind of a fun little look. There's a bunch of different impossible shapes you can make. You can kind of add on to a bunch of them. This is sort of the most basic impossible shape, I think, and a good place to start. So now we'll work on making the isometric camera for Octane, because this is the Cinema 4D isometric camera. And as you can see, the isometric camera natively in Cinema 4D does not translate to the Octane viewer, and that's why we get a different viewport, basically. So we'll go into this, we'll change it to a universal camera, and then we're going to change the camera mode to orthographic so that we don't get any sort of those bendiness of like sort of a camera lens. And then we'll change this back from an isometric to a parallel camera, just makes it a straight on shot. And now we just have to basically reorient the camera to basically be pointing at our object now. And the values that I found work is, I believe it is negative 225 and then negative 45 for the pitch. And then all you have to do is just move your camera, and now you'll notice that it's pretty much the same except just way zoomed out, which we just need to work on the sizing of our object, basically. Don't need that cube anymore. We can group these all together. Group these all together as one object. We'll just call it the impossible object. And that'll be our master one, impossible object master. And we'll make a copy. That way so we don't lose anything non-destructive. That way we can scale up our impossible object. I think we'll just do about 500%. That gets close if I'm not mistaken. And we just zoom out in the Cinema 4D viewer until we get kind of a similar look to, similar scale to the live viewer in Octane. It's a little bit more of just eyeballing it than actual values. It just kind of makes it easier for you to work with it, basically, if the two are similarly in perspective. And now that it's all there, we can kind of just start just to quickly put a material on it. Just put in I love grayscale gorilla. It does a lot of great things. Just grab some marble. That's very MC Escher-esque. Grabbing some marble, putting it on the object. I think we just got to zoom in the material. So we'll do like 300 by 300. There. The material looks relatively scaled properly. And then we can add just a little bit of lighting just to give it a little bit of pop. This is super basic. Once again, Grayscale Gorilla, shout out to them. They do a great job with their HDR links. We'll just throw in a quick little HDRI in there just to help it look better. I personally really like this HDRI with all the crazy tubes in all different directions. Kind of gives a lot of varied lighting to an object. So we'll see how that looks. And there we go. Well lit, at least to get started with. And this is kind of a good starting point to do whatever it is you want. So this is, and also the great importance of making an impossible object is that it's a great way to know if you've set up your isometric camera properly. So it's kind of one precludes the other, basically. And so now that you're ready, you can make your impossible object art, or if you just want to make something of some sort of isometric Wes Anderson style, rinky-dinky diorama style something, you can do that as well. Sort of a good jumping off point. Thanks for listening to this tutorial. It would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel and consider supporting me on Patreon. It goes a long way for me to make more of these videos. Thanks.